Hey everyone, welcome to the Vienna Whyte Roundtable Season 1, Episode 13. I'm your host, Millie Rouge from the band Vienna Whyte here in Edmonton, Alberta. This roundtable is a Yank Music production, and today we have three wonderful guests on with us today. Can we start off with Jacob? Do you want to introduce yourself to the crowd and to the camera?
Hello, I'm Jacob Rose. I'm a singer-songwriter from originally from Alberta, but now I'm based in St. Stephen, New Brunswick.
Beautiful. And Arianna, do you want to tell the camera and the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Arianna May, and I'm a singer-songwriter from Maple Ridge, British Columbia, now based in Toronto, Ontario. That's
beautiful. And Courtney, do you want to tell the camera and everyone else a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Courtney Moore. I'm an R&B singer from Three Rivers, Michigan.
Beautiful. You are actually our first artist on from the States, so I'm very excited to have you here.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have never physically talked to a musician from the States, so I'm very excited to talk to you today. Beautiful. So I wanted to start off with Arianna today. Let me just make sure that's the right way. Yeah. I want to just ask you a couple questions, and then we'll kind of go through each artist and talk about you guys individually and just some of your experiences in the music scene and industry. So Arianna, do you want to tell us a little bit about your musical journey and how you kind of got from point A to kind of where you are today?
Yeah, so I started out as a classical singer. That's what I went to university for, and why I moved out to Toronto as well to finish up my schooling here. And while I was finishing up my grad degree, I started doing a lot of songwriting. I did a project where I read a book every week and wrote a song inspired by that book and posted them on YouTube for like a year. I called it #New Songs on Mondays. And at the end of that, I really loved that whole kind of keeping myself accountable and writing quite often. And so I decided that that was something that I wanted to pursue professionally after that. And so I released that as an EP in 2017, just like a few of those songs. And then now I have a new EP coming out this summer with the first single coming out on May 7th.
Beautiful. So you said you haven't always lived in Toronto. You moved specifically for school. So what kind of made you want to move to Toronto specifically, like compared to any other schools in Canada or kind of close to where you live?
Yeah, so I was accepted to U of T to do a master's in music and classical voice, and U of T is one of the top 3-4 schools in Canada to do that. And so I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of move out east and live in one of the biggest cities in Canada, and kind of see how the music industry was different here.
Absolutely. So you, talking about the Toronto music industry in itself, that's actually perfect timing for my next question. With your experience with Toronto so far, how have you found the music industry compared to other music industry that you've been in, maybe like in BC, for example?
Yeah, so I still feel like I'm very new in the contemporary music industry in Canada in general. Toronto is the only city that I've ever done any sort of singer-songwriter work, so I can kind of only speak to that. But it seems like from the couple years that I've been involved, it's a very welcoming community. It's a surprisingly small community. Like I find when I go to all the open mics, you run into all the same people and everybody really knows each other, which is really nice, actually. I really like that. Everybody seems to work together. I hear some, differing opinions on that. Like some people will say, oh, it's not a very welcoming community.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot actually from I met with another Toronto artist recently, and she said, oh, it's so hard because it's so huge and the opportunities are less because of just the population and how large it is. But that's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, like I definitely don't feel like it's huge, but I don't know, I'm still also kind of getting to know it. But in terms of like booking gigs and stuff, I've never had any trouble with that. Like there's so many venues in Toronto that, you reach out to them and they're happy to book you for an event. And I find that being resourceful on my own that way, like you really have to build yourself. Nobody's gonna pick you out of an open mic and hand you over to a major label, right? It's definitely, that's where the entrepreneur comes into anybody's independent music career, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So my question for you, because in the Edmonton music scene here, we have it pretty good. We're still a pretty small community, which I find very interesting that you say Toronto is like that too. But I think I'm kind of curious to know, because it's pretty easy in Edmonton to find connections and to keep like pretty established relationships. With a place like Toronto that's so much bigger and huge and there is more opportunities, how do you find you make more authentic connections and relationships with other musicians and artists? Like, what kind of ways do you find that you are really good at keeping authentic connections? Because I think in a city that's so big, sometimes it can be hard to feel like your connections are really authentic or they really mean something. So I'm kind of curious to hear from your perspective about that.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that there's a lot of people that I can connect with, but there's only going to be a few people who are my kind of people. And I think that applies for everybody, and it's going to be different people for everybody else. I think if I was just trying to go out and work with, really top level people who have worked with, like Justin Bieber and Shawn Mendes, and because Toronto-based artists, right? They're not they might have been the right people for those artists. They're not necessarily going to be the right people for me. And so it's finding those people down on my level and above who are excited about what I'm doing and who I'm excited about what they're doing or the artists that they're involved with. And then it takes time. Like, those relationships are not just going to continue on their own. Sometimes reaching out to somebody is meeting them in person at 1 or 2 or 3 events and then emailing them and following up and always expressing interest in what they're doing. It's like any sort of relationship where it has to be two-sided and both people have to be invested, right? That's my take on that.
That's awesome. I really like that. So thank you so much. That's Arianna May, everybody. She's just kind of told us a little bit about her musical journey. Now, Courtney, I kind of wanted to go into your musical journey now, because you are from a completely different side of the country to us. So I kind of wanted to hear about your musical journey and how you got from point A to where you are now.
Yeah, so I've been singing since I was like 3, but I played sports a lot, and so singing was always kind of put on the back burner for me. And then when I had my son, when I was 22, I had to quit playing sports. So I that's what kind of got me back into music. I had a really harsh breakup, and then kind of was like, okay, this is what's making me feel better right now. And my aunt started an open mic here in Three Rivers, Michigan, where I'm from. And through that first open mic, I had met a poet who knew someone that was a producer, and so she hooked us up, and I started working with their band as like a background singer, and which is really interesting because growing up I was like, I never want to do background music. I don't think I could ever do that. And so I swallowed my pride and did it. And through that he asked if he could do an album for me. So last July I released my first album, Sinful. And I only wrote one of the songs on there because I was never very confident in songwriting. And after that album, when it was released, I was motivated, I guess, and started writing. And I've working on my new album, which will be out in June, hopefully, because we have all the coronavirus
stuff going on.
So I can't really record right now the song. So I started writing songs after that, and now I actually really like writing songs, where I was like, I can't do it. It's so hard for me to write songs. So
that's really cool. I love your experience, how it really evolved from kind of that beginner stage and not really knowing kind of where to go. But I find the more opportunities you just throw yourself into, the more you get, like you said, kind of more comfortable with writing and more comfortable with being like out and on stage and everything. I think that's really inspiring. Can you tell us a little about like what music scene is like in Michigan, or even just Three Rivers in general? Like, what is it like to you compared to Canada, maybe, for example?
Well, Three Rivers specifically, where I'm from, is a very small town. I'm not sure what our population is, but we have like 2 grocery stores, 1 high school, so it's pretty small. So for me, doing music here is kind of I feel like a lot of people know me because I grew up here, so that hasn't made it difficult for me. But the music scene in Kalamazoo, which is kind of like the next bigger city near me, is growing, and there's a lot of very talented artists. So that kind of makes it difficult to get my name out there in that city. But through the people that I've met from open mics, it's kind of made it easier for me. Like I said, I started singing background for a group that's in Kalamazoo, and so that kind of got my name out there.
Mm-hmm.
But like Arianna was saying, you know, it's kind of what you're willing to get into. So if I'm willing to, you know, send emails and call people and do the difficult things, and it makes it a lot easier. At first it's difficult because I really don't like talking about talking to people, and you know, I don't ever want to feel conceited, but that you kind of have to have that confidence that says I am the artist you want to work with. So
Absolutely.
that's what I've learned this last probably 6 months.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I've even just chatting with other people on roundtable talks, a lot of them have mentioned that even if you don't seem like you have the confidence, it totally can throw off like a producer or someone wanting to work with you just because your vision seems a bit unclear, right? So I don't necessarily think it's like being conceited. I think it's just, you know what you want and you know your direction. You're very confident in where you want to go with it. So I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I have a very random question for you. Your son's name is Kobe, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm curious to know, with the effect of like Kobe recently passing away, how was that kind of, did that affect you or like your son at all through him being named after, I'm imagining you named him after Kobe, the actual basketball player? Okay. How did that affect you when that happened?
So my son he's 3, so he doesn't really know too much. I mean, he knows who Kobe is now because I've shown him like clips and, you know, pictures of me from playing basketball. I always wore 24 and he's my favorite, obviously. So I named my son after him.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, his death was very hard for me. Like, I didn't know Kobe, you know, I just really liked him. I liked his basketball games. And so when he passed away, I was very emotional. And I think because I named my son after him, and he was so young, and the fact in his daughter passing, I think that kind of made it harder for me as a parent, imagining being in that situation where you're going to die and you're with your child. And that kind of made it difficult for me to think, how would I handle that? How do you, as a parent, say, this is what's going to happen, you know? And then as a mom, imagining losing a child. So the whole scenario of him dying was just really hard for me because I saw it from all different angles.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it kind of almost makes you want to be like, okay, I'm going to hug my son closer tonight, just because of realizing, you know, and realizing that he's literally named the name Kobe is like, that would be heartbreaking.
Well, where is he? Why can't I see him? Like, because the All-Star weekend was after that, we watched together. It's like, where's Kobe? And I, you know, kept having to say, well, he's gone.
Yeah. Your son is very cute though. Sorry, just a side note. He's really adorable. I was like looking at all your photos. I was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So thank you so much for sharing. Jacob, now I wanted to kind of chat with you a little bit about your musical experience. You are originally from Calgary, Alberta, correct?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town just outside of Calgary, but Calgary was home base for a while.
Very nice. Okay, so can you tell us about kind of your musical journey from where you started to where you're at today?
Yeah, it's, you know, like many others, you know, started singing at an early age and did musical theater stuff and, you know, played some sports as well. The thing that I kind of hold on to is the story that my mom told me, that I wrote my first song when I was 5 years old. And I was like, okay, so that must mean something. And I kind of hold on to that. And yeah, and like, you know, songwriting and playing guitar, I picked that up when I was 8 or 9. And, you know, it was definitely one of those things that it was something to help me process experience, like growing up in a small town and just like navigating life. Yeah. And then when I was in grade 11, I was playing in like folk clubs just every so often, not gigging a ton. And then I decided I was going to move to the city and study marketing at SAIT, and I thought, hey, you know, marketing, music, it just seems to kind of blend together. Why not double team it?
Totally.
And that was so fun. It was so great being able to jump into the Calgary scene and check out different jams and get to meet people. I went to an Alberta music event when I first moved to Calgary, and I ran into a guy there. The first person I talked to, who was a musician in the scene, his mother was my second grade teacher.
Oh wow.
Which was just so bizarre, but it was like this idea of like, it's crazy just how people come together and how special music is.
Totally.
So
yeah. Can you tell us a little about your current album that you're currently working on right now?
Yeah, this is my second album that I really I'm expecting June. It was supposed to be early May, but with all this COVID stuff, obviously it gets pushed back. It's a collection of 7 songs that I recorded in Montreal, actually, at Lake Studios with a producer named Zachary Smith. He is just also like an incredible singer-songwriter, folk artist, second generation folk artist, actually. And I brought a collection of these songs that how to summarize them. I guess in a way, like these songs are meant to act as a release for people. The title of the album is going to be called "Can't Hold It All," and it speaks to this idea of, we tend to take on more than we're actually responsible for. We want to do more than we're physically able to. We try to push ourselves past our limits.
Absolutely.
And then if we can't perform, then there's so much shame that we carry with us if we just can't do it right, and it just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
So this album looks at that from different perspectives, I guess. And it's like, yeah, it's okay if you can't do it all, and just try and be authentic to yourself and try to be real and experience things for the way they are. And it's
really
okay.
Like that. Yeah, that's a really interesting concept to talk about. And I think in this day and age, especially, it's massively important. And I think right now we're all realizing that kind of, okay, this is what's happening in the world right now. I need to just take a break while I can because I have this opportunity, right? So
yeah.
I want to chat about actually in 2019, you traveled to Europe for a music tour. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tour?
It was, definitely a mini tour. So at that time, I was I was in the last year of my undergraduate degree, and the university I was going to is called St. Stephen's University, and they're the smallest university in Canada. And what's really interesting about them is that they do 2 travel programs as part of their degree.
Nice.
So basically, I was studying in Europe with a bunch of my friends, and used that opportunity to book a couple shows while we were out there. So I picked up a guitar while we were in London, did a bit of busking, and then booked a gig in Barcelona and in Vienna.
That is so cool. Awesome. I really love that. And I love that you played in Vienna too, because that's our band, part of our band name. So
yeah,
I love that. It's really funny because a lot of people think that my first name and my bandmate's first name is Vienna. But we actually, and it's really funny because it does sound like that would be our name. But the reason we named our band Vienna Whyte is because the Billy Joel song Vienna is just like, it describes perfectly like my life and my bandmate's life, just because we're like in that kind of 25 age range, and we're like midlife crisis, like that's how we feel. So we just when we decide this band name, we're like, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be.
Oh, that's amazing. It's a beautiful song.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure. My last question for you, Jacob, before we move on to topic of the day. You've played a couple of house concerts, I know, in different places. What do you prefer more? Do you prefer a cafe venue show that has a bigger vibe, or do you prefer that intimate house concert feel? And if you do, why do you feel that way?
I don't know if I can say if I prefer one or the other. I think they serve very different purposes. And I think for me personally, I also approach those venues differently. Right. If I'm playing like a bigger show, I might make it a little bit rockier, put a little bit more energy. And also, like, if there's more people out there, their energy is also feeding back. And right. So it's this interesting, like, give and take, like ebb and flow dynamic, where it's like, okay, I'm going to give some to you, and then you're going to react back. And then it's I don't know, if it's a dance or if it's a boxing match or something like that. I don't know. But those are like really exhilarating. Like, you get the adrenaline pumping. And then with intimate, like, house shows, those, I think one is definitely more of a performance, and then the other is a display of heart or something, or like there's like the word, you described it as like an intimate house show. it's like there's the possibility to really connect with people and to share your songs and just share like, this is the story behind this song, this is why it's important to me, and this is how it affects me, and this is how other people have been affected. And I think you can't really do that with larger venues as much.
Yeah.
I mean, James Taylor can.
Yeah.
Some played the Saddle Dome,
Absolutely.
and it was incredible. He just like talked and he was so chill, but that's a James Taylor thing.
Right.
But yeah, I think they're both so different. They both are so equally beautiful, and there's a time and a place for both. And
yeah,
I can't decide.
No, that's okay. That's a good answer too. I agree with you as well. Okay, thank you guys so much for sharing more about your journeys. So for this topic of the day, I'm just going to basically ask out the question, and whoever wants to respond, feel free. So if you want to talk, just unmute your mic. And if you guys happen to interrupt each other, because it happens a lot, don't worry, just continue on and we'll figure it out. So our topic of the day today is how to define your own sound. So when I was looking through your guys' Instagrams and social media, I noticed there was a really common theme of you guys have a very grounding like element to your sound, and you know what you sound like. I know a lot of artists sometimes struggle between the like, oh, I'm this genre, but I'm this genre, and I kind of tap into this. But what I noticed with your guys' Instagrams and social medias and the music I listen to from you is that you seem very, very grounded in kind of what you know your sound is like. So I want to ask you guys some questions just to kind of dive into this a little bit further. I'm curious to know, what artists did you guys listen to growing up, and which artists had the biggest influence to your music that you are releasing nowadays? So what kind of artists had the biggest influence to kind of where you're at musically now? And whoever wants to start first, just jump into it.
I'll go first.
Beautiful.
So growing up, I think Alicia Keys definitely was like my biggest influence, and even now I've always loved to sing her songs. And obviously I'm biracial, and so I connected with her in that way. And growing up, I would get my hair done like her, and just was very like, saw someone that looked like me that was doing what I love to do. So I made that connection with her very young, and I still would say she's my favorite artist. I think a lot of my sound now, I love Janae Aiko and Kehlani and Queen Naija. And so I think a lot of my songs, I want to sound like them, like their style. But I still think mine is still a little different. They do a lot of like sing rap, and I want to be able to do that. So like that's something I'm working on. And yeah, I just their songs have impacted my life a lot, and I can relate to their music a lot. So that's why I think I really like to sing their songs. And I like to make music that people can relate to, because those artists I was able to relate to. So a lot of my songs are very personal because I know people are experiencing those same things.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about you guys? What do you guys think as well?
I would say I definitely listened to a lot of like Sarah McLachlan and Sarah Bareilles growing up, and as a singer-songwriter who plays piano and sings, they both do those things, and I love that Sarah McLachlan is also Canadian, and they were two artists that I really, really looked up to when I was growing up. And I also listened to a lot of Cher when I was growing up. My dad had these like DVDs, they were like Cher music videos, and you would put it on and it would just like play for forever. So if he was responsible for getting my sister and I out of bed in the morning, he would blast that through the whole house. And so it's the soundtrack of my high school years.
That's really amazing. And how about for you, Jacob?
Well, I just wanted to say to Arianna, I wish my dad had played Cher to wake us up in the morning. Instead, he loved the bagpipes.
Oh no!
On a Sunday morning, Sunday morning at like 9 o'clock. Oh man. Some of the, like, I listened to a lot of classic rock, Led Zeppelin, Rush, Billy Joel, Elton John, and then some Canadian bands like Chilliwack was a favorite earlier on, Bryan Adams. But when I first started like kind of writing and developing my own sound, like Jack Johnson came through quite a bit, Bare Naked Ladies came through, and then now I'm drawing a lot from there's a band called Bear's Den from the UK, Mumford and Sons, Ed Sheeran, and Amos Lee, just an incredible musician, one of my favorites for sure.
Absolutely, really awesome. So my next question for you guys, what elements of your songs that maybe you've already released or that you're working on, do you think make your song sound like you? So example for this could be like instrumentation, your rhythm, your tone. I know like when you listen to like a James Taylor song, you know it's James Taylor because of his tone of voice. So what kind of elements do you think you guys have in your songs that make you, if you will?
Yeah, I'll go first here. I think my vocal tone is really different. At least in my first EP, it's changed a bit now for my upcoming releases, but having that like opera singing background definitely influenced my pop sound quite a bit. And then I use a lot of like acoustic instruments in my pop music. Like there isn't a lot of electronic instruments in there virtually at all.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I actually, when I was listening to a lot of your stuff, I did notice your tone is super unique. So I absolutely agree with that. What would you say, Courtney or Jacob, about kind of your things that make you, if you will?
I don't know. I think that my voice is pretty original. I actually hate hearing myself sing. I'm sure a lot of artists feel that way, but like people will say, "Oh, you sound so good," and I'll listen back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is that what I sound like to people?" But I think something that is like unique about me is a lot of the like the themes of my songs are very true to who I am. And like I had said earlier, it really tells my story. All of my songs are about something. It's something that personally impacted myself. So I think, yeah, maybe more like the lyrics of my songs are something that is very, very unique to myself.
Totally. Yeah. Because I think a lot of songwriters can just write kind of to the general public or, you know, just about a superficial kind of thing that they've never experienced. So I think that's actually a very good point. Like if you have lyrics that really relate to you, it can totally set you apart as an artist. And Jacob, what about you for kind of, what do you think kind of makes your sound you?
Well, I write in 6/8 a lot, it seems. I just found that out. I think I also have like an interesting voice. My voice isn't super like melodic. Like I don't carry notes out. I like throw a lot of words into a short amount of time. But I think there's also part of that is because I put a lot of emphasis on the lyrics and trying to convey something, like you said, Courtney, that relates to my experience. And something that I'm trying to do now is, you know, writing something that would help me during this time, or it's like, what are songs that I need to hear, would have needed to hear when I was a kid, or something like that. So
absolutely. Yeah, that's really awesome. So thank you everyone for sharing about our topic of the day today. We are actually almost out of time for today. So I want to thank you guys again for coming on. Thank you, Jacob, Arianna, and Courtney. It was lovely having you guys. I'm Millie Rouge from the band Vienna, Whyte here in Edmonton. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and hit the bell button on YouTube to be notified when our shows come out. We release them Monday to Friday, so there's lots to watch. And before we sign off, can everyone just kind of go around and say where these audience members can find you and anything you have coming out that maybe you want to talk about?
Awesome. I'm Arianna May. I've got an EP out. It's on all the streaming platforms. And then I have a new single coming out on May 7th called Wildfire.
I'm Courtney Moore. I have an album out on all streaming platforms called Sinful. It's spelled SENFUL. And I just released a song last Friday called Selfish that's also available. And I will have an album in June.
I'm Jacob Rose. You can find me on all streaming platforms as well. Instagram, Jacob Rose Music. New album coming out in June as well. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for having us. This has been great.
Yes, thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. Stay safe, and we will see you guys soon. Have a great day.
See ya. Thank you.